Hello, everyone. Welcome aboard Flight 17 of Clandestine International Airlines. I'm your captain, Captain Otto. Of course, we've got as co-pilot and electronics warfare officer, the great Roger Hansen, very skilled at his job. And we're just reaching our cruising altitude of 32,000 feet on our way to Shambhala International Airport at an undisclosed location somewhere in the Himalayan mountains, or possibly excuse me, the Himalayan mountains. If you know how to pronounce that properly, please mention it in the comments. We're always ready to be corrected on these things. Looks like the weather might be a tad of turbulence ahead, but I think we're up above that more or less. We've got our cloaking device on, and Roger is staying on that. Although some of the countermeasures we've encountered lately are a little sophisticated, so we'll still take an eagle eye to make sure we get where we're going. So I'm going to, now that we're cruising, I'm going to turn off the seatbelt sign. You can unbuckle your seatbelts and light the smoking lamp. The smoking lamp is lit. Smoke them if you got them. And I'm going to now turn on the automatic pilot. And yeah, there we are. Hello, Roger. How's it going today?
It's going pretty good. Did some editing. I'm gonna have some new backgrounds put in for the show, so I was telling you that before the show started. So I figured I'd mention that, tell you what's going on the show. So
Nice. Well, our viewers have something to look forward to next week then.
yeah.
We're always trying to improve the show, tweaking it here and there. This is in many ways the nature of an artistic experiment, as well, of course, we're also trying to be entertaining and informative. And we're also learning as we go. And we're happy that everyone is here who is here that are part of that process. So, but I hope your weather is staying well, Roger.
Oh yeah, it was actually nice today. Today was the first day I could actually go outside on the back porch without my shirt on.
Wow. That
Oh,
is a sign of spring.
yeah,
That
it
is definitely a sign of spring on the way.
it
Yeah, we actually got up over 70 degrees today,
felt great, didn't it?
which is amazing because it wasn't that long ago that it was like 7 degrees below zero.
Yeah.
And that's Fahrenheit for our international audience, which I don't know what that is in centigrade or Celsius, whatever they call it these days, but it is um, mucho cold.
I
Yeah,
when you were talking about the past and the present and everything, the one thing that really stood out to me was the saying in Alcoholics Anonymous that they had that I really held on to, and it's actually pretty cool. It's yesterday's history, tomorrow's a mystery, but today's a gift, and that's why they call it the present.
I like
So,
that. That's
so
really good. That's very true.
the cool
That's
part
very true.
the cool part about it is uh it's not a saying that was brought created because from like an intellectual or anything it was writers, cartoonists. Eleanor Roosevelt, I believe, even said it at one point.
Nice.
It was a different variation of it, I'm sure,
Nice.
it really does help out, and I think that's the one thing that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to a lot of the stuff you were talking about. You know what I mean? Because you could get stuck into the past, and that's really where the guilt comes from. It's from your past.
Yeah.
If you're feeling a lot of guilt over stuff and shame, that's because you're not dealing with things that occurred in your past and learning to let go of it. Because three different three different phases of the process. First, you have to acknowledge it. Then you have to
Right.
freaking accept it, and then you have to let it go. You have to surrender it.
Yes.
And if you're not willing to do that, then you're going to live a life of guilt, shame, and remorse.
Hmm.
You know, so I mean, that's the way I've had to deal with it. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but
Yeah, no, it's true. And the thing about the past is that we so often are looking to the past, and like you're saying, it's bringing us guilt and shame. How could I have done that? I'd ruined this. This could have been that. This could have been this. And we look at these things we've done, situations that we've created for ourselves and for the people around us, and we don't want them to be. I mean, obviously, that's part of it. It's like, no, I really didn't want to do that. I'm really sorry I did that. I feel bad that I did that. And the trouble is, when we focus on it, we're there and we want to fix it, and we think we could have done this, but we really ultimately can't fix it. So this gets right into the Buddhist idea of clinging, craving, and clinging. We crave to change this situation, and we cling to the idea that if only this, we could do that, but we're staring into that past that doesn't exist. So we're somewhere that isn't real, and we're trying to fix a problem that is no longer real, right? So
mm-hmm.
it's such a tough line, because the other way people cope with this, and this goes into some of what you were saying, is they ignore it. Pretend it didn't happen. Just block it away. And as you were saying, the first thing you have to do is admit to it being there and accept that, yeah, I did do this. We're extremists. We either want to like drench ourselves in self-pity, or we want to ignore it. Hey, everything's fine. Ha ha ha. They're so well, too bad for them. Ha ha ha. Which is a false front. We have to look at it, regret it, say, I don't like that. And yes, recognize that it makes me feel bad, but then say, I can't change that. And we have to accept that we can't change that. And that's really tough, because it's so tempting to go back and wallow in it, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and then we say, all right, I don't want this to happen, so I'm going to learn from this. I am going to resolve never to do this again. And, we're not always successful at that either, as you know, as I know.
Mm-hmm.
But if we continue with this resolve, eventually we will change. It takes a long time. But again, I am comforted by the idea that we are determined by our actions. We are related through our actions. We're the heir of our actions. We are defined by our actions, and you can change your actions. Even if you
Right.
don't change your actions, you still know you can. And at least with me, I change a little, it doesn't work. I change a little more, change a little more. It's so slow, Raj. It's so slow. I always use the metaphor of a tree, that I'll just like be walking through a woods and just walking right into a tree and banging my head on the tree and banging. And I'll do that for like years. I'll bang my head on the tree, and suddenly I'll look up and say, oh my, I'm banging my head on the tree. This is dumb. And then I'll go back to banging my head on the tree for a couple more years. And it's like, yeah, this really is dumb. And then banging, maybe I shouldn't do this. And then like, turn 90 degrees and walk another direction. I'm probably into another tree, but at least I'm a little further, along. Um, so it's not an overnight thing, and I think too many people are looking for like overnight success, but even a small thing can be so empowering, because it helps us break that habit of dwelling too much on what we've done. Um,
For me, it goes even further. Like I was telling you, about the gift and stuff. Living in the present. Now, that's not just the guilt of the past, but you also have the anxieties of the future. And I think that's another thing that people have a hard time dealing with, because they put too much stock into the future, and they don't realize that now, here in the present, is the most important time that you need to focus on, because like I said, the past is history, the future is a mystery, and today is a present. It's a gift. So you need to learn how to focus on this moment and do the next right thing, do the task at hand. You know what I mean? And learn how to
yeah,
live like that, because you can make goals all you want, just don't expect it to be the outcome you expect. And that brings you into another area, like expectations. People set expectations that don't get met, and then they're disappointed from it, and they become anxious. You
yeah,
know, so I mean, it's really important. And I know, saying that both me and you No, because we talked about Shakespeare before, and it's to thine own self be true.
Yeah.
That's another thing that I had to learn. That's very, very true. To thine own self be true.
Yes. And difficult to do too.
Right. You know, you have to be honest with yourself about your flaws and your values, and then right now, you know what I mean, you have to do it, and that's where the action thing comes into play for me. So, and it's about acting with integrity, and it's, you know, uh, principles before personality. You don't you know, have hard feelings towards somebody because of the way their personality is. It's you have a common goal and you try to work through things. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that personalities is really a big thing too that really messes people up on a personal level. That's where it really gets deep.
Yeah. Well, you make a good point about the future too. I
Mm-hmm.
was thinking when you said that. Um, yeah, and like you were saying about when you set expectations that you don't meet, and very often I think we set expectations that are too high for ourselves in the knowledge that we might very well not meet them. We love to sabotage ourselves because
Mm-hmm.
when we sabotage ourselves, then we don't have to do something. A part of us is very lazy, and all this is very hard work, making ourselves better and getting through life and everything. But if, oh, well, I failed at that, I better not even try. It's like an old script, an old groove that we just fall into. But that, yeah, it's, but when you were talking about the future and how people need to look at the gift we have, the present, um, I'm reminded of something. I think it was Alan Watts, who had his limitations, but was a very wise guy in many ways. Um, a wise guy. But he said one of the things he noticed about people is they spend all their time thinking about the future. Like, I want to do this. I want to have this possession. I want to have a car. I want to have a house. I want to have, I want to have a pizza, right? They spend all this time and effort working and planning to get this. And they're thinking about it all the time and what they're going to get. Well, they finally get what they want. Once they have it, they're already thinking about the next thing. They're not really enjoying what they have here in the present, this gift, as you put it. They're just worried about what they don't have in the future and what they need to get. And they've got all this anxiety. I don't have this yet. I don't have that. Um, and that's something that in Buddhism, they talk about how, we have these desires that we cling to. And very often, we desire sensual pleasures, right? So anything that excites touch, taste, smell, feel. We desire perfumes and delicious food and all these things. These are all sensual desires. We can think about a meal we're going to have Thanksgiving dinner. A week or so before when I was a kid. Oh, Thanksgiving! I knew my grandmother was going to be coming to visit, and my mom and her would get up at like 4 in the morning, start cooking. You have all these delicious smells. We'd be chased out of the kitchen. Don't run across the floor. You'll make my 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 cake fall and all that kind of stuff. Right. And you
Yeah.
spend all that time thinking about it. And then you get to the meal and you just eat it. And way too much of it, usually.
Mm-hmm.
But spend more time and have more pleasure with thinking about these desires than actually fulfilling them. We spend 99% of our time with anything that we like, we spend thinking about it, you know?
Yep.
I can think about, actually, and a little plug, if anyone's there, I'm going to be playing an open mic with a couple of friends of mine tomorrow night. And part of me is like, wow, we're playing, see my friends, da 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 da. And this, I'm spending all this time thinking about that. Actually, playing is kind of a pain in the butt a lot of ways. You got to get instruments and set up, sound check, make sure everything's tuned. You're up there sweating. You hope you don't make any mistakes. You get down, and I mean, it's fun and everything, but so much of the fun is thinking about the things we're going to do. And it just goes to show where our heads are at, because we're always in this little imaginary world. We're never in the present. We're thinking about the future or the past, and they both both things make us unobservant. They make us inattentive to detail, and this can be a problem. This can be a problem.
Yeah, I do admit you are correct on a lot of that. I've had to deal with a lot of that stuff just for the last 23 years. I actually had to count it up how many years it's been since I sobered up. I sobered up in 2003, and
Wow.
I'm like, I had to sit and do the math because I forgot how long, how many years it was. But
23, very good number.
23 years, man. And the thing that really stuck out to me in what you were saying there was like the lying to yourself. You know what I mean? And
Mm.
I've done these shows with so many people, and there's so many of them that just flat out refuse to admit that you are capable of lying to yourself. You know what I mean? Like there's this.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's our default position. That's our default position most of the time. We're always lying to ourselves, man.
Yeah.
That's why when you were talking about being to thine own self be true, and talking about that important step, that is hard. That
Mhm.
is very difficult, because there's so much in ourselves that we're in complete denial about. There's so many things about ourselves that we feel we define ourselves. We define ourselves by these desires. We define ourselves uh, by things in us that are not very nice. Defilements, you would say in Buddhism. We define ourselves by our greed, by our anger. And look at the mainstream. I mean, most advertising is based on you identifying yourselves with with greed and gluttony and like all of the seven deadly sins. It's like obey your thirst. Remember that one?
Yeah.
Do what your these appetites tell you, and that'll make I'm the guy that obeys his thirst. You don't want that to be the basis of your self worth. So when we're really trying to figure out what's going on, when we're looking inside, it's so difficult. The hardest journey, the hardest work I've ever done is internal, is looking inside, and I'm still working on it. There's a lot. There's a lot. It's a lifelong process, but yeah, just that being truthful with yourself, it's tough. The fortunate thing is that even though you try to deceive yourself, even though you obfuscate things, even though you can be very subtle about lying to yourself, about misleading yourself, it's not quite a lie. I'm just misleading them a little, right? No
Hmm.
matter how clever we are at fooling ourselves, we're not cleverer than ourselves.
That's right.
We can always outsmart ourselves. So, and these defilements and these negative aspects, they'll tell you, "Oh, you can't win. You can't win." It's, of course we can. Of course we can.
Hey,
And if God's willing, we will.
the thing that gets me about the principles over personality is like the personality. When you hear people say the word personality, what they're really saying is like when for everybody when it comes to their personality, that's really their ego and it's their
Uh,
pride. And usually when you live off of your personality, which is your ego and your pride, you want to usually lie or lash out, you know. Um, and that's the first instinct that people usually do, and that's because they don't place their principles above their personalities. They do it vice versa. They live a life that is completely filled with just their ego and their temperament, and they're built up on
and
pridefulness.
they lash out in protection. They want to protect that because they know it's not real. They know it's very, very, very delicate. It's
Right.
very fragile. And yeah, and that's the personality built up, like I was saying before, about those defilements, those negative feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the guy that drinks a lot. You know, I'm the guy that does all these drugs. I'm the guy that gets into fights. Um, and I think, of course, part of them knows that this is just this little house of cards, and so yeah, they're going to lash out and defend their fragile little ego structure, because it's not built on anything but a set of this personality is just built up of all these tropes, all of these stereotypes, and all the things that they picked up from commercials and the people around them that were powerful. You know, I mean, where did John Dillinger get his role models, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, even not just commercials, but I mean, for me personally, when I started looking in on myself, I started realizing that, okay, and I'm not big on the whole nature versus nurture thing either, but
Right.
like I actually did realize that when I was growing up, I was taught wrong. I had to learn, I had to relearn how to do the next right thing. You know what I mean? And that was the hardest part, but I had to live, like I said, with principles over personality. And even though personally I didn't feel that it was the thing that I wanted to do, I still did it because my principles override overrid they overridden my personality. You know what I mean? Even though
Right.
it didn't match with who I was or what I did, then that I still did it. Like
Yeah.
my sponsor told me every morning when I wake up, since I didn't have bad knees, I needed to try to the first thing I needed to do is come off the bed, hit the floor with my knees, and do prayers. And I was not a prayer guy
Right.
at all. So, but even though he told me to, or even though I didn't want to do it because he told me to do it every morning, I made it a habit to try to pray before I got up out of bed. And eventually, it got to the point where the moment I woke up, my knees hit the floor.
See, you
Automatic.
could control that personality and mold it to something better principled
Mm-hmm. And
through.
just that action. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That's exactly what Aristotle said. He said all excellence is through training. You repeat an excellent action again and again, and then it becomes your nature.
Mm-hmm.
So that's conquering your personality. And I guess part of that for you, I would imagine, was you had to step back and say, I'm going to do this anyway.
Yeah.
Ignore what the personality was. So I'm not going to pray. It reminds me of something C.S. Lewis said. I don't know if you've read much of C.S. Lewis. Great guy. He wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but he wrote a lot of great nonfiction. The Great Divorce is a great little booklet by him. I would suggest anyone reading. It's about hell. Very interesting. He also wrote the Screw Tape Letters. Roger, you might get a really good kick out of those. Those were a series of letters from one demon, one devil, to another devil about situations on Earth. So it's like things going on from a devil's point of view. It's very odd. But he was a an atheist and an irreligious kind of a person, and he eventually came to religion. You know, he became very, very religious, very spiritual person, and he was very glad of it. But he was talking about, he'd been thinking about religion for a long time and this and that, and he said finally he decided to pray, and he hadn't prayed before, and he said never was there a more reluctant worshiper who got down on his knees finally and prayed. And that was the beginning of a new life for him, one that was very positive for him and positive for all of his readers, too, I will say, because he produced some wonderful, beautiful work. Um, but yeah, that's what I thought, Roger. You and C.S. Lewis. So you're in good company. You're in good company, my friend.
I'll tell you one person that if anybody really wants to learn a lot about what I just said there, check out Burns Brady. This guy, he's out of Kentucky. I believe he's from Owensburg. He's one of the few people I can honestly say that knows how to um, practice these things in real life on a day-to-day basis. You know what I'm saying? He'll just spell it right out to you. His name's Burns Brady. One of the most amazing people I've ever met. And he's just an old redneck from Alcoholics
Nice.
Anonymous, and he has no problem with people hearing his last name. Just to make that clear, he'll
Okay.
he'll
Now,
tell you.
now, Does he have a YouTube channel or something?
No, he does the circuit. He goes from place to place and treatment centers and everything, and he teaches
Nice.
people the 12 steps and stuff like
Nice.
that. He's a pretty cool guy. He's got his own books. Burns Brady. He goes by Burns B a lot too. So, but he talks about that stuff all the time, and he basically tells people to stop dwelling in what was or what might be. Be honest with yourself about who you are and what you value in life. And then he'll go on to say other stuff like, you know, well, first of all, act on those values that you
Right.
that you know what I mean. And whenever you do that even if your ego or like other people's opinions get in the way. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's
That yeah, you know what? That reminds me of something they say in Buddhism about how, and you were talking about principles over personality too, suggested it. But when you're here now and you're not worried about the past or the future, yeah, you're in this moment where everything is kind of suspended. But then that's where in Buddhism they call it mindfulness, which is keeping something in mind, keeping those principles in mind, so that you've got this present, you've got this power. What do you do with it? Well, you've got these principles. So you don't have to think about it. And in Buddhism, they have the further point about it is you apply these principles and you look at the results, and you're going to see, as people have been saying in Buddhism for 2,600 years, you will be happier when you do this. Your life will be better. And everything you've said to me about the 12-step program and other people I've known, I have a cousin of mine that the program helped immensely. Came to the same thing. Everyone I know that went through it with a contrite and full heart for it, have been much happier. Their lives work better because you've got better principles to use.
mm-hmm.
These are proven. It's not anything that you have to guess about, but you can. The proof is in the pudding. Try it and see. If you honestly try and apply these things to your life, no matter where they come from, I think all paths have these positive aspects to them, because wise people all through history have looked at human problems and they've come up with similar solutions. This is how we do this. This is the best way we can use our minds to reduce our suffering, to make ourselves and everyone around us happier and better off. So I'm going to check out that guy, though. I'm sure that there's something on YouTube. I'm sure some people have
Oh,
filmed it
most
and
definitely,
the
most
guy out.
definitely. Now, with me, my whole goal in all of what you were talking about is three things, and it's been this way ever since well, not since I figured out what the heck I was doing, because that takes about 3 years of sobering up. Just
Right,
just
right,
so, I mean, just so if anybody listens, they hear that. Just understand, for the first 3 years of your recovery, it's going to be rough. Okay,
mm,
but after those 3 years, I started figuring out that there's only three things that I really, really wanted to work towards as goals, and that's first of all peace of mind. I wanted integrity, and then out of all of it, my life ended up showing authenticity. Everything was authentic. It wasn't me pretending. It wasn't people around me pretending. It was an authentic life. You know what I mean?
uh-huh,
So, and I that was actually given to me. You know what I mean? And that was because of the whole thing of be true to thyself. I mean, you know what I mean? Don't just be honest with yourself about who you are and
right.
what you value in life, and it'll work out.
I think all those things support each other,
Mm-hmm.
you
You
know,
really do.
and but it is that a very difficult thing to be honest with ourselves. It's so tough to do, and it's a long process. It doesn't happen quickly, and I think it's a constant process of staying honest with ourselves too. We can't let the guard down and slide back. I always said that you have to keep going. because if you stop, you think you're stopping, you're not, you're sliding back down.
Yeah.
You have to be in constant motion. And fortunately, though, after a certain point, you get momentum. So you just kind of, and you were talking about 3 years, and you've got the momentum up that you can start doing some serious work
Well,
on your mind.
not really. That was just the start. Uh, Let me 8 years. 8 years, I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, my goodness, man, what the heck? When am I going to start learning stuff? And then, like, at 10 years, I'm like, hold on, dude. I did learn stuff. What am I talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
You need a little distance from stuff like, oh, yeah, right.
yeah. I'm like, wow. And when you're in the moment, that's the thing. It doesn't dawn on you. It just happens. You know what I mean? Like you're not methodically pacing yourself, trying to make things happen the way you want it to. It just kind of happens, and you're not even realizing it until you look back and you reflect on it, and you start seeing, hey, man, I'm changing.
You know, metaphor I use with that with Bob, we would talk a lot about the path. This is an old Eastern metaphor used in Buddhism, and you've got a path that you're following. And the path is, we're all on a path, and there are many paths. And some go to really nice places. Some might go to a nice lake with, nice trees, cool breeze. Other paths might go to a burning pit, you know,
Mm-hmm.
where garbage is being burned and there's coals and this and that. Some paths lead off of cliffs. You want the path that's going to take you to the top to release. And the path, sometimes you're walking on hard stones, sometimes you're splashing through mud, sometimes you're climbing up rocks. And you're, as you say, you're in the moment, you're just looking at this path and you're saying, and then eventually, though, you'll stop and then you look back at how far you've gone. And that can actually even be a little scary. See, geez, bloody hell, I'm halfway up this mountain. You don't, it's, and while you're struggling, it's like, oh, this is so tough. But then you look back now and, oh, yeah, there's that mud pit I was stuck in for years.
Mm-hmm.
There's that other place. But you're right. Sometimes you need a little distance from things, and you have to take a breath and tell yourself, hey, you know what? Look at where I am now compared to where I was. I am making progress. It's not instantaneous. It's not when you want it. Like you said, it happens when it happens. But it does happen as long as we keep applying ourselves. And, as someone said to me, well, how long do I have to do this? It's like all the time. This is it. There isn't really anything. There's nothing else really to do with ourselves. And part of it, though, is like you were saying about getting into the habit of prayer. You have to get into the habit of these things. I have to get into the habit of meditating every day, breathing every day. I was thinking too, it's a good thing you weren't doing Buddhist prayers because then you'd have to hit your knees and then you do a full genuflection and hit your forehead on the ground. So you got off lightly there, pal.
I've seen the videos. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. They do the full genuflection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I've seen it. It's wonderful. I think I told you the story. I was staying out at a Buddhist monastery, and it was during a festival, Katina. It's a festival that has to do with originally it had to do with monks creating their robes, but it's now like a festival where lay people come and they present gifts of robes to the monks, and it's a big party and families all show up and everything. And I was in a room and there was the abbot of the monastery. He's a very very wonderful gentleman, very nice guy. When I first arrived at the monastery, he handed me food with his own hands, which was a wonderful, wonderful welcome from him. But he's talking to this woman who's, she's this nice middle-aged woman, very respectable, and they're just chatting and talking. Maybe they were talking about a village they both used to live in. They were very friendly and they were very relaxed. And then suddenly it was time for her to give him this robe, and instantly their faces changed. They both looked very serious. She handed him the robe. She stepped back, did the full genuflection down to the ground, and got back up. And they said a few, and then suddenly they were back to laughing and smiling and everything. Just the way that the Buddhist clergy is just such a seamless part of the culture. It's like, this guy's my friend, but then suddenly, okay, now it's his function as a bhikkhu, as a monk. and they're very serious. They do all the things, but then right back to like happy, laughing. It was really kind of a wonderful thing to see.
That's, that's I never was able to go to a Buddhist monk monastery. The I had an opportunity to go. What is that group called? The Hare Krishnas. That's Hindu, isn't it?
Oh, the Hare Krishnas, yeah, they're that's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness.
Yeah.
They're one of the few Hindu groups that actually proselytize. Most Hindus aren't that interested in getting converts, but those guys are out there. I don't know too much about them, but I'm sure they could be interesting. From what I know of their path, and I don't know much, so please correct me in the comments. I think their path is one of the heart, karuna. They just love Krishna. It's just like you devote yourself to the God and just do nothing but like this. It's sort of like there are Christian mystics that do the same approach sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get a chance to visit a Buddhist monastery, or hell, even a Hare Krishna group, I'm always interested in like other cultures, other religions, and things like that. I was at the monastery visiting my friend who was a monk out there, and I went out and stayed at the monastery twice for a couple of weeks each time. And I didn't stay exclusively at the monastery. We actually did some traveling around, and we went camping one time. We actually went up to Mount Shasta to look for the hidden city.
I love
You
that
know that,
story.
the hidden city
Yeah.
in Mount Shasta. Yeah,
Now,
we were looking for space aliens.
you wanted to be serious, so don't get me started.
Well, maybe we could have him and me on one of the shows that you're associated with that have more like supernatural topics and things like that.
Yeah, because
But
I really do like talking about Mount Shasta. Just that.
well, we were there. We were there. We also went camping up near Lake Tahoe one year. That was pretty fun.
Oh wow.
That was pretty fun. Yeah, yeah. We had to find some place where they didn't have a fire ban because we were doing outdoor camping without tents. So it was just like when we were leaving the monastery, and the abbot said, "Where are you guys going?" And Panabasa said, it was Panabasa Bhikkhu then. He said, we're going on a Dukkha Acharya retreat. And he just laughed. Dukkha Acharya is learning through suffering. So we're going to go and camp without any tent or anything. It's out in the cold. And our only warmth was building fires. But it was pretty fun. It was pretty fun. And yeah, it was cool.
It's pretty nice. Now, if you ever get a chance to go to the Oregon caves, man, I suggest that. I've heard and seen a lot of footage on that, and that is actually pretty cool. And it's not too far from where Mount Shasta and all that is either.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm ever going to get out to California again, but if I do, I'll check it out. We've got some caving systems around here. And what's that really big cave system? They took me there as a kid. Majestic Caves? No, I can't think of the name of it now. Hell's Caverns? It was a big one. They filmed movies and stuff in there. I think that's where they filmed Xantar, Thing from Venus. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Xantar, I used to watch the cartoon. I made fun of it kind of because he seemed to look a lot like He-Man.
Oh, this was an old black and white. Was it black and white? It's an old movie, and it was about this scientist that was in touch with Venus, the planet Venus, and he was in communication with this guy named Xantar from Venus, right? And he was like, "Xantar's my friend. He's my only pal. I'm going to take over the world, and I'll be running everything." It was just like Xantar will fix everything. It's just very, very bizarre. I love those old movies. I love those old movies.
I was mistaken, and I remember Xantar being in the '80s, where it was a cartoon.
I think that's a different character. I think that's a different character. I think I know who you're talking about there, though. But that was a different. Yeah, this was like I'm trying to remember who was in it. There's this one actor in there. He was always in these weird movies. The kind of stuff that what's his name there, Corbin would make buckets of blood, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean they're so ridiculous, but they're fun to watch. Uh, yeah, we have to start doing in-flight movies here on our Hannibal 17 ship. Um,
That would
and
be
you know, Rod, I
excellent.
think I am getting some signals. Yep, there's a signal from Shambhala International Airport. They announced they're going to be opening the secret door soon. So I think we're going to be wrapping up this episode here pretty shortly.
Let me grab my
Before we do,
seatbelt.
oh, you better. Yeah, I'm going to light the seatbelt light, and please return your seats to an upright position. The smoking lamp is now turned off. Stewards will be by to collect your rolling papers, hash pipes, or any other paraphernalia. Before we turn off the automatic pilot, Roger, would you like to share your socials with everyone so they can contact you if they feel they should?
Yeah, you can find me at Roger Hanson or Roger Hanson at ROGLOL1973 on X. You can also find me at Roger_Hanson on Minds.com. I also have a Discord channel called The Wonderful World of Weirdness where you can contact me. And you can also find me at Roger's Hangout on Teams as well as Live with Roger Hanson or Roger's Hangout now on Elements Matrix. That's it.
Excellent. Well, I am to be found at Rogers Hangout, and actually, if you contact Roger, you can probably contact me. Otherwise, check out my website, navakavada.org. That's Navakavada. It's spelled just like it sounds. I'm also on minds.com as Otto X, and it's Otto_X. And we've got a Navakavada YouTube channel and a BitChute channel. The BitChute channel are older videos, but I think there's some really good ones there, including some nice interviews. And that's about it for me. So I'm going to switch off the automatic pilot and begin our descent toward Shambhala International Airport. Those of you that are continuing on to Agartha, please remain in your seats. Everybody else can deboard then. So thanks everyone for being here. Thank you especially Roger, our co-pilot and electronics warfare officer. And hopefully we will see you all next week. Thank you for flying Clandestine International Airlines.